for those of you that don't know, I've done a podcast for a few years called Business Over a Brew. Somebody mentioned that I stole it from Jerry Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, and that's absolutely true. I just changed the name a little bit. So we're going to record this, and this will be part of the show. A few years back, our company bought the local weekly newspaper called The Advantage, and it really kind of created a little bit of a mess for us. It was kind of a really quick thing. We did it, in a hurry, to be honest, and it just complicated the way our business was running and created a lot of stress and anxiety for me about, and Aaron was there through this, but just a lot of stress about just our processes and what are we doing, and I guess kind of the life of an overall business owner of just, how do things best operate. So come on in, Deanne. So I had just read this book actually called Traction because I was struggling with those issues of just billing and invoicing clients properly and sales and marketing and a bunch of different things. And I just read this book, and Matt invited me to a networking event where I met John Gross, who was an EOS implementer. And Traction is all about EOS, which stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, and just gives you a system for operating the business. So I met John at a networking group, and I was like so excited to meet him because I just read this book and I was super excited to implement some stuff of it. And John and I got to talking, and more and more about EOS and just giving us a foundation for running the business, operating the business on a day-to-day basis, and not just that, but where you're going in the future as well. So John's helped us out a lot. The system has helped us out a lot. And I thought it would be a good idea just to bring him on the show, introduce people to him, and talk a little bit about EOS and how it might be able to help your business, because it can be a frustrating thing being a business owner. And what EOS does is take a lot of that frustration off your plate. So with that, John, if you want to just give a little bit of your own personal background and introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, Nick, thanks for having me.
Sure.
And I have been an implementer for 3 years. And prior to that, I started my career actually in the Air Force. And when I left the Air Force, I spent over 25 years working in publicly traded and privately held corporations, leading the operation, building teams, solving complex problems. I literally have worked with hundreds and hundreds of teams in multiple industries throughout the U.S. and all over the globe. And frankly, one day I just got tired of the bureaucracy. And I realized I hated the bureaucracy, but I liked working with teams. So I became a process improvement coach. And it was through working with small businesses that I got introduced to EOS, because I kept seeing the same problems of no vision, no plan, a lot of firefighting, people issues. Most people complained of long hours. And then I was working in Chicago with a company, and I saw how they introduced me to EOS. And I saw how EOS answered these questions. And more importantly, it also, with the proven process EOS has, allows me to use the skills I mastered in my corporate career to help small and mid-sized businesses. And it's a little silly, a little corny, but I knew immediately I wanted to be an implementer and to help people implement and achieve more success. And so that's why I'm here today.
Well, I want to get to talking about just the 6 components of the system, but I think you wanted to ask me a few questions about just how we've used it maybe, and how it's been helpful for our company.
Yeah, no, I wish I'd written those down. No,
yeah, that was good.
No,
I thought when you said you've worked with hundreds of small businesses over many years, and I thought you were going to say none of them as big a mess as Nick's was when we came in. I'm glad you didn't say that.
I said I would keep that between us. No, so just what was your? You've already told us what led you to start. What was your biggest surprise about EOS when you got started?
Just that we weren't as bad off as maybe I thought. Like, everybody's got some issues to deal with. But the biggest surprise was it just gave us meeting on a weekly basis and dealing with those issues. That's part of the system, is a weekly meeting with your leadership team, which we've never had before. And I guess the biggest benefit for me was when you're the owner or that you're running the business, you feel like you're on an island a little bit, and don't really have anybody to share those issues with. So, when we created our leadership team and had, an accountability chart, it gave me 3 people to start talking those issues through with and coming up with solutions and meeting on a weekly basis, figuring out where we're going in the next 90 days. And so I don't know if that's a surprise, but it's definitely been something that's been really beneficial for us, is just getting together on a weekly basis. And, everybody puts issues on the list, and it gives you a process for solving them.
Good. No, everywhere I go here, meetings are bad, and meetings aren't bad. They're just bad meetings, and EOS helps us change the typical meeting from being a reporting meeting where we spend all our time justifying, defending, rationalizing, explaining, grandstanding, to on track or off, and then we save all our time to just problem solve, and then we make sure we problem solve the biggest issues. And that's how you feel the productivity, because you're really solving things and making them go away, and you just get better at it as a team, and the whole team then gets to participate. And so the other question, what was the hardest part about implementing?
Probably the hardest part there's focus and vision. The vision part was really fun and easy for me, because that's what I like to do, figure out where we're going in the next 3, 5, 10 years. So that part was easy. The hardest part has just been, still learning the process, learning the system. We're not perfect at it yet by any means. We've got a long way to go in terms of, what we're doing a great job, I think, of identifying and discussing the problems. Probably the hardest part for us has been predicting and with accuracy what we're going to do in the next 90 days, and then sticking to that and, actually executing and accomplishing it. So that's been the hardest part for us, is, figuring out, because you have they're called rocks every 90 days, where it's, basically a goal that you're trying to achieve in the next 90 days. And you have certain things that you think are going to lead you to achieving those. And sometimes we found that we're not very good at being right about what's actually going to help us move the needle. So, that's been probably the hardest part for us, is the predicting with accuracy, what we're going to achieve in the next 90 days and then achieving it.
Okay, cool. A lot of folks have that problem. You're no different. But the key is what you've done is you've kept doing it.
Right.
And you get better and better. And the fact that these things are happening help factors into the next cycle that you are doing. So, and as you know, part of the reason that we have quarterly rocks is that for the average person, 90 days is about as far as they can see. And as a team, after 90 days, the team will start to fray direction. They'll lose the focus on direction, even the best, most laser-focused teams. So after every 90 days, we want to get together and say, how do we do? Then we want to make sure that we're still on tap with the vision. And after that, then we want to say, what are we going to do for the next quarter to move us forward? And then we leave that meeting aligned with what are we going to do? And we can communicate that with everybody. So no, perfect. The last question I'll ask you is, for your folks that were not on the leadership team, did the structure help them to get started and take ownership?
The people that joined the leadership team?
Correct.
Yes, absolutely. You could definitely feel they felt more, took more ownership of the company. And they were already leaders of the company. That's why they were picked to be on the team. And it also weeded out some people that we thought maybe should have been on the leadership team. It turns out maybe they weren't good choices. So, but the people that have really taken to it, they've enjoyed being on the leadership team, and I think taking more of an ownership in the company as well. So yeah, we've got great people, so that's been an easier part for us probably, but yeah, that's been a good thing for everybody involved, I think.
I remember when we first met at the radio station,
Mm-hmm.
You said you don't have a leadership team.
It was me, basically.
Yeah.
So.
And then we started talking, and we met the first time, and we flushed this out. We suddenly realized that everybody has a leadership team. They're leaning on people to do things. They just don't realize it, and they never formally say roles and responsibilities. And that's what I saw evolve with your team, and saw them take to it. And there's always a learning curve as you change and grow.
Well, and we've always kind of had a bit of a complex business model, and really there's two masters that we're kind of serving. We've got the audience and the content side of things that we're trying to, content that we're trying to produce for radio and digital and print and whatever. And that's kind of been one department. And then there's the probably equally, if not more important side of it, which is the advertising side of things for us, which is, helping clients grow their own businesses. And they're related, but they're definitely not the same thing. And a lot of times what's good for content isn't good for advertising and vice versa. So that's been something that it's helped us flesh out a little bit of, who does what, how do these things relate to each other? And that's probably been for our leadership team, the biggest thing is the content people seeing what the sales and marketing people are doing, and the sales and marketing people seeing what the content people are doing. And, a lot of times in radio stations, just historically, it's been like, a wall between those two departments of you've got sales over here, they're out selling the advertising, and then you've got content over here, and what they want are a lot of times two different things. So putting leadership in place that can see what both sides are doing has been beneficial for us.
Okay.
With that, sounds like you're out of questions, so I'll ask you some questions. I'll just a quick synopsis overview of what EOS is.
So EOS is really about helping you harness human energy. And what we do is help you get focused and prioritized on your vision, your goals. And we do that really by helping you build out a model. This model has 6 key components, and it was developed off of realizing that most entrepreneurial businesses have 136 issues that they're wrestling with simultaneously. And we know that to the extent you can strengthen these 6 key components, they just fall away because they're really symptoms of true root cause. Mm-hmm. So we're working with leadership teams. And by the way, I'm a coach. I'm not a consultant. I'm here to help you learn this, embrace this, and play the game. Because frankly, after you've heard about my career, I probably have an answer or an idea of what I would do. But what the hell do you gain when I tell you what to do? You learn by doing it, discussing, struggling, and then fixing what doesn't work. So anyway, we're helping you strengthen these 6 key components to take ownership. And do we have time to talk about the model?
Sure, absolutely.
So the model is really starts with vision, because vision is the first key component of your business and really any business. And that's about getting everybody 100% on the same page about where you're going to go. Then your second component is people. And very simply, you need great people to achieve a great vision. Now, the interesting part is every business has its own unique definition about what are great people. And so when we work on that component, we've got to cut through all the jargon that's out there, top quartile, rock stars, superstars, A players, and really just figure out what are great people for your unique organization. And the third key component is data. And that's by using facts and figures to make data-driven decisions versus relying on feelings, ego, and emotion to make those decisions, like most entrepreneurial businesses do. Now, an interesting thing happens when vision, people, and data are strong. Your business becomes very transparent, and you start to see all the obstacles and impurities and challenges bubbling up. So the fourth key component is issues. And that's about strengthening the issue component. It's about solving issues at their root cause and then making them go away forever. Because you can't be successful long-term unless you're really good at solving your issues and making them go away. Brings us to the fifth key component, which is process. Process is about doing the most important things in your business the right and best way every time. Now that creates consistency, which allows you to have scalability. And then with strong process component, there's also a secret reward. Because when your people know what to do, when to do it, how to do it, that frees you up to grow the business, lead the business, and maybe just go home for dinner on time. Because you're not chasing after them, telling them what to do, and you're not continuously retraining them. And that brings us to our sixth key component, which is traction. Traction is about bringing vision down to the ground and executing on it day in and day out. And the failure of most people to achieve their vision is weakness in the traction component. We actually, if you see the model drawn, it's a circle. Vision's at the top, traction's at the bottom. And we'll tell you it's not coincidental in the model that we have it set up that way, because if you have vision without traction, all you have is hallucination.
I want to talk about the accountability chart, and specifically the visionary and integrator roles within a company. Can you talk about those things a little bit?
Sure. What you alluded to at the beginning when I talked about people was we set up an accountability chart, and part of that is identifying major functions and then everybody's key roles, and then identifying the structure and the leadership of the integrator and the visionary. And so the integrator is the glue. They drive accountability. They're the drumbeat. They coordinate all your major functions, get them pursuing common goals. Most or all companies have a fifth role called a visionary. And the visionary is that person at 30,000 feet, big ideas, big relationships, that's out there driving the business forward, creating culture, and giving a direction to the team. Now, the interesting part, most visionaries do not want to, not that they can't, don't want to, get down in the trenches and deal with the nuts and bolts, the day-to-day, and the people issues, because that's what integrators do. And so, what we'll tell you is when you go through this process of creating an accountability chart, you need to determine if you have a visionary in that, and hint. And then once you determine if you have a visionary and the integrator, you need to figure out their roles. And when you do that, you need to make sure they're complementary, not conflicting, because the very nature of these personalities and their success can lead to them being at odds. When they're at odds, it's unbearable. When they're kind of doing complementary roles and working together, it's like rocket fuel. You're just taking off because everybody's doing their part, building and achieving the vision.
That the integrator role for us has been the hardest one to fill, but it's more of a key component than the vision. You can do without the visionary, and the visionary, I think, a good definition is it's the guy that has 20 ideas a day and 19 of them are bad. That's definitely me. So the integrator's role is to kind of tell them, here's the 19 that are bad, and let's take this one and run with it and execute it. But talk about the importance of the integrator role a little bit more, and how do you go about identifying who that might be in your company?
Well, it's that person that likes to organize and structure and sets meetings, holds you accountable, makes lists. They're the ones that say, Nick, that's a really great idea. And then the other 19, the other 19, maybe we should think about them. And that. So that person is there. We actually, and that we feel so strongly about that, we have an assessment that you can take to figure out where you're at. And while it sounds like everybody would be really good at tracking stuff and making lists and really be in that integrator role, no, it's like a 2 or 3 to 1 ratio of visionaries to integrators in companies. So what we'll tell you is you have a great integrator, you better keep him because somebody else wants him. But yeah, no, they're that glue, they're that drumbeat. They're the ones that say what Nick meant to say was this. Not that it happens at your house.
Sure, no, never.
Okay.
But you can, and the other thing that just the system has done for us is living in those 90-day worlds, having those rocks to where I might have a great idea, but if it's not within the framework of the next 90 days, then we have to wait. Or I have to wait, really. So that's been important for us to say, because it might be a great idea, it just might not be the right time for it. Can I say one thing?
Yeah, sure. So you're absolutely right. It's about, okay, we've got a plate full. We can't do that. Let's do that in 90 days. And then, but you say, hey, this is perfect. A classic example is I'm going to buy my competitor out. I got to do that now. I can't wait. But now your team is making decisions about rocks, and they've agreed this is our focus. They are going to be the ones that pop up and say, okay, get it, Nick. What are we not going to do? Which traditionally is now what happens. Oh, we just got one more thing to do. So it's one more thing in the 25 we already agreed to,
Right.
instead of the 3 to 7.
Yeah.
And so they challenge, and then that lets you get focused, but it also lets them get buy-in because they were part of the decision about what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. And that's huge in building your team.
I want to talk about the people component a little bit more. One of the things that always, I guess, bothered me, we probably all had to let people go at some point, and it's not a fun conversation to have ever. And one of the things that always bothered me was that people were surprised by getting let go. So I'm sitting here thinking, I can't believe you're surprised. I mean, you should have seen this coming, but I hadn't communicated to them enough about what the expectation was, how they were not meeting it, and what they were going to do to turn it around. Instead, it was just a conversation of, hey, we're going to have to let you go. And I hated the feeling of them being surprised by that. They should have known, what, and it's not their fault, it's mine. They should have known the expectation better. And EOS really helps with that.
No, I think one of the things that EOS brings to small businesses, we're going to help you with leadership. A lot of folks have not had a lot of leadership training and exposure. There are a blue million books, probably 10,000 things you should technically do from those books. When we boil that down to really 5 leadership abilities and 5 management abilities, we say try to do all of those and work with you in that. Partly, and it revolves around doing it with your direct reports and your leadership team. And I won't go through the 10 of them because, well, frankly, I can't remember them all. But there's a point where if you're doing all those 10 things and you're communicating, you're setting vision, you're getting resources, you're having these one-to-one conversations, and it doesn't work out, you're going to have to go and start a process of getting them progressive discipline. I think that's the corporate term we used to use. We call it 3 strikes. And what we would say is, if everything's not working, there's issues, sit down with them and come with 3 examples of what's not working. And why 3? 3 because 1, they dismiss. 2, they'll rationalize. 3, you can't walk away from 3 examples of the problem. So you have 3 examples of what's not working, and then from there you say what you need them to do better. And then you tell them in 30 days we're going to meet again and expect improvement. And if we don't see improvement, we're going to have to do something else. 30 days later, you sit down, you see if they fixed the problem. If they did, good job, we're moving on. If not, you repeat that conversation. By the way, you'll know if they've fixed the problem, and you'll come with your 3 examples. And you have the same conversation, and you end it by, again, restating your expectations and clarifying that they're not going to be here in 30 days if they don't improve and change. And so then 30 days later, now that's 60 days time, you meet with them. They've either fixed the problem or they know they're leaving. Mm-hmm. Now, the interesting part you have when you are using the 5 leadership rules, our task, and the 5 management tasks, and they're ideally going to realize that things are changing and they're not a fit. They'll leave on their own. And ideally, if you follow the 3-step rule, most times you never get to the 3rd step.
Because you either get improvement or they leave.
Exactly.
That's typically what happens.
And one of the things that happens, and I was in the corporate world, we were terrible at coaching. Well, it's even worse in most small businesses. Mm-hmm. So at this point, you need to tell them your expectations, because maybe no one has ever done that. You've got to give them a chance to improve and step up. So, but no, that's the process. Again, there's no surprises, and it's natural. And let's be honest. In my corporate career, I've let people go, and it's never fun. It's never fun. But you're doing it for the good of the organization, and ultimately for them, the good of them.
It's such a different conversation too when you've given them those. You've given them the first 2 strikes. You've talked about it. You've put them on the plan and discussed it with them, and it hasn't happened. They really have nothing to say other than, I understand. You were fair with me, and that makes for a much less stressful conversation, I think.
Oh, exactly.
So, how long do you typically see a business take to get things turned around after they start EOS?
We typically, on average, are with a client for 2 years. A few go quicker, a few go longer, but it's about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, we start out by helping build, teaching the traction tools, and then helping build a vision, and then helping with the quarterly meetings. And so while we say 2 years, in reality, we're with you 10 or 12 times over the 2 years. Because this is about you executing, you making plans, and you learning. And we're always available. I'm always available. Call me, and let's talk. Because a lot of times you don't need 3 hours. You don't need to have a Zoom or a team meeting. You just need a little advice about what's going on or resources.
Running towards the end of the time, any specific areas that we didn't touch on that you wanted to mention?
But I would like to mention, one of the things, and this is becoming more and more prevalent in businesses, is EOS really helps if you're transitioning your business, whether you're going to pass it down to the family or you're going to sell. And what EOS does in terms of if you're selling is it helps you really make sure you have a strong team and you've got documented core processes. And if you talk to M&A people, they'll tell you, you're looking at multiples of your EBITDA typically, and this will add 1, 2, or 3 more. If you're at 5, you'll be at 7 or 8, as an example, because it's no longer a business that's dependent on the founder or the owner to run. They have a team, and you're buying a real performing asset.
Yeah.
In terms of transitioning to one generation to the next, there's always angst from Gen 1 to Gen 2. Gen 1, they're not going to run it like I do. Gen 2 is, hey, I want to run the business. And there's always, with Gen 2 taking over, there's always little people issues. There's invariably the person that, I remember when you swept out the building, or I held you when you had you wore diapers, and you got to work through all that. EOS helps you work through that. At the same time, it creates a vehicle for you to communicate between Gen 1 and Gen 2 without Gen 2 having to come to your meetings so that allows that quicker taking of ownership, creating a vision, and successful transfer. And you can look in several different places. The statistics for transferring from one generation to another are terrible. About 33% of businesses successfully transfer from Gen 1 to Gen 2. It's around 10 or 12% Gen 2 to Gen 3. And literally, fourth generation business coming out from Gen 3 to Gen 4, 1 in 600. And so they're just terrible odds. So you've got to stack the deck in your favor,
right?
And get prepared if you're transferring.
It's one of the Jim Collins books. I think it was Good to Great. Talks about level 5 CEOs and how most of those in large companies were promoted from within. Very rarely is it bringing somebody from the outside in. And that's one of the things that EOS can do when you build the leadership team up is you identify people that might be prepared to take it over.
Right. No, exactly. You prepare them, you grow them. They learn how to lead, and they learn the business, and they understand the vision. Yeah, perfect.
Right. Any questions that you guys have that John can answer for you?
You say 2 years with the company. Does the size of the company or the business matter? How long you're with?
Not really. It is really it's generally that. It's the strength of the leadership team. And by the way, you asked the first question, so you get it wrong.
Oh, thanks. Sweet.
Yeah.
Right, we're not really selling books.
Yeah, we're not. So yeah.
Matt wants a book, so he's going to ask a question.
John, will you tell us what your sweet spot is, what types of businesses, and or like what kind of income those businesses are making that you like to work with the most?
So in EOS, it's a privately owned business. Typical size is between 10 and 250 employees. We really shy away from putting a dollar figure on sales because in today's world of capitalization and software and crazy businesses, it doesn't always flow right. But I would say a good threshold is a minimum $1 million to $2 million in revenue as a start. And more importantly than just that size for that market, because by the way, there are a lot of people that fit into that category, right? It's about that owner and the leaders wanting to be open-minded and being willing to make change and growth-oriented. And most importantly, they want some help to grow, take their business to the next level. So that's who I want to work with. In terms of industries, frankly, we think EOS is industry agnostic. We believe that, and I've worked with enough different companies now to say I agree with that. If I had to look at my own business personally from my experience, I look at manufacturing, construction, service, transactional type businesses. That's for me personally, but it applies to everybody. Everybody's got the same 6 key components of their business, and some size or another. Some have bigger than others. So.
All right.